Think this season couldn't get any crazier? Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make everything we've lived through this year feel like child's play. We've got a story that could change the history of this franchise forever. A defensive crisis blowing up at the worst possible time. And a shot at redemption that no one saw coming. If you think you know the Commanders, I guarantee you'll see things differently after this video. Stick around till the end, because the last piece of news is so wild. Once you hear it, you'll understand why this organization never stops surprising us. And if you're a true Burgundy and Gold fan, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Because what's coming in the next few days is going to be historic. After decades of watching this franchise wander aimlessly, without a real home, without that RFK connection that made us great in the 80s and 90s, we finally had something to get excited about. A brand new, state-of-the-art stadium on the site of the old RFK, our sacred ground. $3.7 billion in investment. The promise of greatness again. The hope that Josh Harris and Adam Peters were building something special for us the fans, who never jumped ship, even during the darkest Dan Snyder years. But now, there's a twist in this story that absolutely nitrogen monoxide one saw coming. According to a bombshell report from Don Van Natta Jr. and Adam Schefter at ESPN, President Donald Trump wants the new Commanders Stadium to carry his name. Yeah, you heard that right. Trump Stadium, or Trump Dome, or whatever they want to call it. And here's the craziest part. When President Trump wants something, he usually gets it. I'm telling you this story is bigger than football. We're talking politics, presidential legacy, and the very identity of this franchise. Can you imagine? The Washington Commanders Stadium, the team from the nation's capital, carrying the name of one of the most polarizing presidents in modern U.S. history. Now let me break down how we got here, because this didn't come out of nowhere. President Trump is scheduled to be at Northwest Stadium tomorrow for the game against the Lions, where he'll take part in halftime activities honoring the military. But according to White House sources, there are behind-the-scenes talks happening with members of the ownership group led by Josh Harris. And here's where it gets interesting. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has already gone public, saying this stadium wouldn't have been possible without President Trump's influence. And you know what? Technically, she's right. It was the Trump administration that made the old RFK site available for this project. Without that federal push, Josh Harris would probably still be stuck in D.C. red tape trying to get permits. So from a purely transactional standpoint, President Trump has a case to make. But here's the million-dollar question. Do Commanders fans want this? I think this is the toughest decision Josh Harris will have to make as the owner of this franchise. Because look, I get the politics of it. Trump helped make this happen. He's got a relationship with Harris. And when a sitting president asks you for something like this, it's not exactly easy to say no. But on the flip side, we're talking about the identity of this team for the next 50, 60, 70 years. The Cowboys have AT&T Stadium, but everyone still calls it Jerry World because it's Jerry Jones' palace. The Patriots had Gillette Stadium, but it was Belichick and Brady's kingdom. The Packers have Lambeau Field, named after their legendary coach. Are we really going to have Trump Stadium? Let me be clear, this isn't about whether you like Trump or not. This is about what our stadium represents. When I think about going back to RFK, I think about the Hogs. I think about Joe Theismann. I think about the 3 Super Bowls we won. I think about John Riggins running over the goal line against the Dolphins. I think about Art Monk making impossible catches. I think about the dynasty of the 80s and early 90s. Now all of that is going to be tied to the name of a president. A president who's not even from D.C., he's from New York. And here's what drives me crazy. According to the ESPN report, there haven't even been formal talks yet. This is all back-channeling, feelers, and direct messages. But the story's already everywhere. Fans are already split on social media. Some say they'll never step foot in that stadium if it's named after Trump. Others say it would be an honor. Now I ask you, is this really what we need right now? Because let me remind you where we are as a team. We've just lost 4 straight. Jaden Daniels is hurt. Terry McLaurin is out. Marshawn Lattimore tore his ACL and probably played his last snap for us. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. is done for the season. Austin Eckler too. Our defense is giving up points like it's Halloween candy. And in the middle of all this football chaos, what are we talking about? The name of a stadium that won't even be ready until 2030. But here's the truth. This does matter. Because that stadium is going to be around way longer than any player, any coach, any single season. This is a 50-year legacy. And if Josh Harris makes the wrong call here, he could alienate a huge chunk of the fan base before a single brick is laid. I'm telling you this, Josh Harris is in an impossible spot. If he agrees to the Trump name, he makes the president happy and probably locks in continued federal support for the project. He gets direct access to the White House for anything he needs in the coming years. He'll be able to navigate DC bureaucracy in ways other owners can only dream of. But he'll split the fan base. And I'm not talking a small split. I'm talking a real fracture that could take years to heal. On the other hand, if Harris says no, if he decides to go in a different direction with the stadium name, then what? Does President Trump take offense? Do mysterious federal roadblocks start popping up? Does the city of DC suddenly have issues with permits? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but let's not be naive about how politics works in this town. And here's what really bugs me. Why can't we just have something that's ours? Why does everything with this franchise have to be complicated? The Eagles have Lincoln Financial Field and no one's fighting about that. The Giants have MetLife Stadium, boring, but it works. The Cowboys have their Jerry Palace, and yeah, it's flashy. But at least everyone knows what to expect. We, the Commanders, can't even build a new stadium without it turning into a national political soap opera. But let me give you a different perspective, because I think there's something bigger at play. Scott Abraham from 7 News DC said something interesting. If this is something Trump really wants, as part of his legacy, it's probably going to happen. And that makes me think, what kind of legacy are we building here? Because look, no matter what you think of Trump politically, the guy knows real estate. He knows construction. He knows branding. If he puts his name on something, it brings attention. It brings media coverage. It brings tourism. New York has Trump Tower, and it's one of the most recognizable buildings in the world, like it or not. So from a pure business standpoint, could having Trump Stadium in DC be good for the franchise? Could it bring more national attention? More primetime games? More high-profile events? Now I ask you, is it worth sacrificing the political neutrality of the franchise for those benefits? Because that's what we're doing here. Once you put a president's name on your stadium, you're no longer just a football team. You become a political statement. Half the country will love you for it, and the other half will hate you. There's no middle ground, and let me be honest with you, I don't know what the right answer is here. Part of me thinks we should honor our history. Call it Gibbs Stadium after Joe Gibbs, the greatest coach in franchise history. Or Riggins Field after John Riggins. Or just our FK Stadium to .0 and keep that connection to our glory days. But another part of me gets the practical reality. If Trump really helped make this happen, if he really used his influence to get us that land, then maybe he does deserve some kind of recognition. Doesn't have to be the full stadium name. Could be Trump Plaza or Trump Gate or something like that. A compromise, but here's what worries me. Compromises rarely satisfy anyone. If you give Trump partial recognition, he'll probably want more. And if you give him the full stadium name, you're going to alienate fans who've been with this team for decades. It's a no-win situation. And Josh Harris knows it. Now let's talk about timing, because this matters. The stadium won't be ready until 2030. That's 5 years from now. Trump is in his second term, which ends in 2029. So when the stadium finally opens, Trump won't even be president anymore. He'll be a former president. Does that change the equation? I think it does. Because naming a stadium after a sitting president who can help you with federal stuff right now is one thing. Naming it after someone who'll be out of office when the building isn't even finished, that's a whole different deal. And here's another thing to consider. What if Trump runs again in 2028? Yeah, I know he can't serve more than the terms constitutionally. But we've seen crazier things in American politics. If he somehow finds a way to run again, do we really want our stadium at the center of that controversy? These are the questions Josh Harris has to be asking himself right now. And honestly, I don't envy him one bit, but here's what I do know. This story isn't going away. Tomorrow, when Trump is at Northwest Stadium, reporters are going to be everywhere trying to get comments. They'll be asking Harris. They'll be asking Dan Quinn. They'll be asking Adam Peters. And depending on what they say or don't say, we're going to learn a lot about where this organization stands. I'm telling you this. Pay attention to the exact words they use. If Harris says something like we're considering all options for the stadium name, that means Trump is definitely in the mix. If he says the stadium name will reflect the history and values of this franchise, that probably means they're trying to find a diplomatic way to say no. And if they say nothing at all, if they refuse to comment, that might be the biggest sign of all. Because silence in these situations usually means negotiations are at a critical point. And no one wants to say anything that could blow up the deal or stir up more controversy. These are the questions Josh Harris has to be asking himself right now. And honestly, I don't envy him one bit, but here's what I do know. This story isn't going away. Tomorrow, when Trump is at Northwest Stadium, reporters are going to be everywhere trying to get comments. They'll be asking Harris. They'll be asking Dan Quinn. They'll be asking Adam Peters. And depending on what they say or don't say, we're going to learn a lot about where this organization stands. I'm telling you this. Pay attention to the exact words they use. If Harris says something like "we're considering all options for the stadium name," that means Trump is definitely in the mix. If he says the stadium name will reflect the history and values of this franchise, that probably means they're trying to find a diplomatic way to say no. And if they say nothing at all, if they refuse to comment, that might be the biggest sign of all. Because silence in these situations usually means negotiations are at a critical point and no one wants to say anything that could blow up the deal or stir up more controversy. Now let me speak directly to the fans for a second. I know a lot of you are mad about this. I know you feel like this is just another distraction from what really matters, winning football games. And you're right. But you also have to understand that in today's pro sports world, this stuff is all connected. The stadium isn't just where we play. It's a revenue machine. It's how we generate the money to pay top players, hire the best staff, build elite practice facilities. A $3.7 billion stadium doesn't pay for itself. We need naming rights. We need sponsors. We need events. And if putting Trump's name on the stadium helps us get all that, then maybe, just maybe, it's worth considering. Even if we don't like it politically. Even if it makes us uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, what matters more? Our feelings about the stadium name, or having the resources to build a team that can compete for Super Bowls for the next 20 years. Now I ask you, would you be willing to swallow your pride if it meant having a winning team? It's a tough question, and I don't judge anyone for their answer. But it's a question we all have to ask ourselves as fans of this franchise. And here's the last thing I'll say about this. No matter what happens with the stadium name, this already changed the conversation around the Commanders. For the first time in years, we're in the national spotlight for something that's not a scandal or a negative controversy. We're talking about the future. We're talking about building. We're talking about being relevant again. That is value. Maybe not the kind of value we wanted, and maybe it comes with complications we didn't expect. But after the decades of Dan Snyder, after years of being the laughingstock of the NFL, the fact that we're even having this conversation means we've come a long way. So yeah, Trump Stadium is controversial. Yeah, it's going to divide fans. Yeah, it's going to spark debates we'd rather not have. But it also means we're finally relevant again. And after everything we've been through, that's something. Is it enough? You decide. If you thought that was complicated, wait till you hear what's going on with our defense right now. When you think about everything we've been through with this franchise over the last 2 decades, there are only a handful of bright spots that really stand out. One of those moments came last year, when a second-round rookie cornerback stepped in and played like he'd been in the league for 10 years. Mike Sainristil wasn't just good, he was electric. He was the kind of player that made fans say, Finally, we found something special. He was fast. He was smart. He had instincts you can't teach. He read quarterbacks like he had the other team's playbook in his hands. And most importantly, he made plays when we needed them most. Clutch interceptions, pass breakups that saved touchdowns, open field tackles that stopped drives cold. He was exactly the kind of corner Dan Quinn loves. Aggressive, confident, fearless. Commanders fans were hyped. We finally had a young corner we could build around for the next decade. Alongside Jaden Daniels on offense, Sainristil was the face of a bright future. Adam Peters had struck gold in the second round, and then this year happened and it all fell apart. Mike Sainristil hasn't just come back down to earth, he's fallen into a hole. The same plays he made look easy last year now seem impossible. The instincts that made him special? Gone. And the most concerning part, he's making the kind of mistakes rookie corners make, not the kind of mistakes a second-year player who already proved he belongs should be making. So what happened? How does a player fall off this hard from one year to the next? Dan Quinn thinks he has the answer. And honestly, when I heard what he said, it all started to make sense. According to Quinn, Sainristil is pressing. He's so desperate to repeat last year's success that he's overplaying. He's trying to make the big play on every snap instead of just doing his job and letting the game come to him. Quinn said, and I quote, "There have been highs and lows. The turnover plays, the picks I saw in LA and in recent weeks, that ball hawk mentality, which I love. But there've also been plays where he's trying hard to make those plays. I'm telling you this, Quinn's being diplomatic here. But what he's really saying is that Sainristil is playing out of control. He's abandoning his assignments, trying to be the hero. And in the NFL, when you do that, you get burned, and you know what's the most frustrating part? We've seen how good Sainristil can be. We're not talking about a guy who's in over his head. We're not talking about a draft bust who never had the tools. We're talking about a player who's already shown he can dominate at this level. So the problem isn't talent, it's mental. And honestly, that's almost worse because it means Sainristil is beating himself. Let me explain something about the sophomore slump in the NFL. Because it's real and it hits a lot of players. In your rookie year, nobody really knows who you are. There's not enough film on you. Offensive coordinators haven't studied your tendencies. You play with the confidence of someone who has nothing to lose. Because no one expects anything from you, but in year 2, everything changes. Now there's a full season of tape on you. Coordinators have studied every snap. They know your strengths. More importantly, they know your weaknesses. And they're going to attack those weaknesses without mercy. On top of that, now there are expectations. You're no longer the promising rookie. You're the guy who's supposed to perform at a high level every week. And that pressure can be overwhelming, especially for a young player still figuring out how to navigate the league. Now I ask you, is it fair that we're being this hard on Sainristil? Because look, the guy is 23 years old. He's in his second year in the NFL. Yeah, he had an amazing rookie season. But that doesn't mean he's going to be a Pro Bowler right away. Player development isn't linear. There are ups and downs. There are growing pains. But here's the problem. The Commanders don't have the luxury of patience right now. Not with how our defense is playing. Not with 4 straight losses. Not with Marshon Lattimore out for the season with a torn ACL. Sainristil isn't just another corner on the roster. He's a key piece of this defense. And if he can't find his form, we're going to keep bleeding points like we have been. And here's what really worries me. The Commanders have been moving Sainristil all over the place, trying to figure out how to use him best. They've put him in the nickel. They've moved him outside. They've used him in different schemes. And every time it looks like he's starting to find a rhythm, they move him again. How is a young player supposed to develop consistency when his role keeps changing? I think this is partly on the coaching staff. Yes, Sainristil needs to play better. Yes, he needs to stop overplaying. But he also needs stability. He needs to know exactly what his job is on every snap so he can execute without overthinking. And with Lattimore out now, we're probably going to see Sainristil move back to the outside permanently. That was his spot last year when he played so well. Maybe, just maybe, going back to that familiar role is exactly what he needs to get his confidence back. Because that's what this really is, a confidence issue. Sainristil is in his own head. He's overthinking instead of reacting. He's trying to be perfect on every play instead of trusting his natural instincts. And the only way out of that is to play through it. He needs to make a few good plays to remind himself and everyone else why he's good at this. He needs to get that swagger back he had last year, when it felt like he could do anything on the field. But here's the million-dollar question. Can he do it in time to save this season? Because let's be real about where we are. 4 straight losses. Jaden Daniels hurt. Terry McLaurin out. A defense giving up over 30 points a game the last few weeks. This team is spiraling. Sainristil getting back to form isn't going to fix all of that. But it could be a step in the right direction. It could be the spark. This defense needs to start getting stops when it matters. Now I ask you, do you still believe in Mike Sainristil? Because I do. I know it sounds crazy after everything I just said, but I still believe in this player. I've seen what he can do when he's playing with confidence. I've seen the instincts. I've seen the speed. I've seen the football IQ. It is all still there. It's just buried under layers of overthinking and self-imposed pressure. And here's what gives me hope. Dan Quinn sees the problem. He's not trying to hide it or make excuses. He's being real about what Sainristil needs to do differently. And that matters because it means there's a plan to fix it. Quinn is a defensive coach. He's worked with elite corners his whole career. He knows how to get the best out of these guys. If anyone can help Sainristil snap out of this slump, it's Quinn. But Sainristil has to do his part too. He has to listen to the coaching. He has to trust the process. He has to stop trying to be the hero on every play and just do his job, and more than anything, he has to forgive himself for the bad plays. Because that's what separates good players from great ones, the ability to have a short memory. The ability to let go of a mistake and focus on the next snap. Sainristil is still learning that. And honestly, at 23, that's totally normal. The problem is we don't have time right now. So here's what needs to happen. Sainristil needs to have a big game against the Lions. He needs to make a few plays that remind him and all of us why he was so special last year. He needs to get that confidence back, and if he can do that, if he can find his form again, then maybe, just maybe, this defense can start to turn things around. Maybe we can start getting the stops we need to win games, because without Sainristil playing well, I don't know how this defense gets better. We just don't have enough talent in the secondary to cover for a corner who's struggling. I'm telling you this, the rest of this season for Mike Sainristil is going to define his career. Sounds dramatic, but it's true. If he can bounce back from this slump, he'll be stronger mentally. He'll know he can overcome adversity. He'll have the confidence that he belongs at this level no matter what. But if he can't bounce back, if this slump continues, then we're going to have to start asking bigger questions about whether he's really the player we thought he was. And honestly, I hope it doesn't come to that. Because I still believe Sainristil can be special. I still believe he can be a cornerstone of this defense for years to come. He just needs to remember how to play like Mike Sainristil again. Remember how to play like Mike Sainristil again. If you thought we were done talking about wild stuff, think again. Because now we're about to dive into something that sounds absolutely ridiculous on paper. But in football, on any given Sunday, it could actually happen. The Washington Commanders, riding a 4-game losing streak. Without Jaden Daniels, without Terry McLaurin, without Marshawn Lattimore, without Dorrance Armstrong Jr., without Austin Eckler, are set to host the Detroit Lions this Sunday. And these aren't just any Lions, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. Jared Goff is playing like an MVP candidate. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs are tearing defenses apart. Dan Campbell is a head coach who takes losses more personally than anyone else in the league. And to make things even more intense, the Lions are coming to Northwest Stadium with revenge on their minds. Because the last time these two teams met was in the divisional playoffs last year, and we went into their house and wrecked their perfect home season with a 41-point beatdown. Dan Campbell hasn't forgotten that. The Lions players haven't forgotten that. And they're coming here looking to destroy us. On paper, this should be a massacre. The Lions are favored by 2 touchdowns. Analysts are predicting we'll lose by 20, 25, maybe even 30 points. No one, and I mean nitrogen monoxide one, is giving the Commanders a shot in this game, and honestly, who can blame them? Marcus Mariota is going to be our quarterback, a guy who hasn't been relevant in the NFL in years. Our defense is giving up points like they're handing out candy. Our roster is wrecked by injuries. We're in free fall. But here's the thing about football that makes it the greatest sport in the world. On any given Sunday, anything can happen. I'm telling you this, the Commanders have exactly zero pressure in this game. Absolutely no one expects us to win. The season is already being written off by most national media. With Daniels hurt, everyone's already talking about next year's draft. And you know what happens when a team has no pressure? They play loose. They play fearless. They play like they've got nothing to lose, because they literally don't. Let me remind you of something. Last year, when we went to Detroit for that playoff game, no one gave us a chance. The Lions were the #1 seed. They had home field. They had momentum. And we were the wild card team that barely made the playoffs. And what happened? We dropped 41 points on them. We dominated their injury-riddled defense. Jaden Daniels played like a 10-year vet. Sam Howell, wait, no, that was Daniels. The point is, we did the impossible. Can we do it again? Now I ask you, is it completely insane to think we could steal this win? Because look, I know it sounds crazy. I know Marcus Mariota isn't Jaden Daniels. I know this Lions defense is fully healthy now, not like last year, when they were missing half their starters. I know we're playing without our best offensive weapons, but I also know this, we've got home field. And when the crowd at Northwest Stadium is locked in, it can be a tough place to play. It's not the old RFK, but it can still get loud and hostile. I also know Dan Quinn is a defensive coach. And if there's one thing defensive coaches know how to do, it's build game plans to slow down explosive offenses. Quinn's been to Super Bowls. He's coordinated elite defenses. He knows how to get a team ready for a game like this. And here's the other thing, Marcus Mariota isn't trash. Yeah, he hasn't been a consistent starter in years. Yeah, he's clearly on the back end of his career. But the guy was the number 2 overall pick for a reason. He's got talent. He's got experience. And in a game where no one expects anything from him, he might just surprise some people. Am I saying we're going to win? No, let's be real. The odds are stacked against us. The Lions are better at almost every position. Their offensive line is going to bully our defensive front. Jared Goff is going to have all day to throw. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be open all game. But here's what I am saying. If there's ever a moment for this team to do something completely unexpected, it's now. When everyone's counted them out. When no one believes. When the pressure is completely off. Because that's exactly what happened last year in the playoffs. No one believed in us, and we used that as fuel. We played with a chip on our shoulder. We played like we had something to prove. Can this team do that again without Jaden Daniels? I think the answer lies in how the vets respond. Mariota needs to have the game of his life. The offensive line needs to protect him better than they've protected Daniels lately. The receivers need to make plays when the ball's in the air, but more than anything, the defense needs to show up. They need to get stops. They need to force turnovers. They need to make Jared Goff uncomfortable in the pocket. Is it possible? Technically, yes. Is it likely? Honestly, no. But here's the beauty of football. No matter how unlikely something is, there's always a chance. There's always that possibility that everything clicks for one day. That the bounces go your way. That the refs make a few calls in your favor. That your opponent has an off day. And if all that happens, if the stars align, then maybe, just maybe, we can do the impossible again. Now I ask you, are you going to be watching this game hoping for a miracle? Because I am. Despite everything I've said about the odds and how realistic this is, I'll be watching that game on Sunday with hope. Because that's what it means to be a Commanders fan. It means believing even when there's no reason to believe. It means having hope even when logic says you shouldn't. And honestly, after everything we've been through as a fan base over the last 20 years, what's one more game where we're massive underdogs? We've been here 1,000 times. And every now and then, just every now and then, we find a way to win. Maybe this Sunday is one of those days. Maybe Marcus Mariota channels his 2016 self and plays like a Pro Bowler. Maybe our defense finally makes the adjustments Joe Wood Jr. has been trying to implement. Maybe the Lions come out flat after steamrolling teams for weeks. Or maybe they blow us out by 30 and confirm what everyone already thinks. That this season is lost. But here's the thing. I'm not going to stop believing until the clock hits 0. Because that's not what we do as Commanders fans. We don't quit. We don't jump ship. We ride it out till the end, no matter how ugly it gets. And who knows, maybe the universe owes us one. Maybe after all the wild ways we've lost games in recent weeks, it's finally our turn to win one in crazy fashion. I'm telling you this, if the Commanders somehow find a way to win this game, it'll be the most improbable victory of the entire NFL season. It'll be the kind of win people talk about for years. It'll be the kind of win that could shift the momentum of our entire season. Is it realistic to think that'll happen? Probably not. But is it possible? Absolutely. And in football, sometimes that's all you need. So yeah, I'll be watching on Sunday. I'll be yelling at my TV. I'll be believing we can do the impossible again. Because that's what it means to be a fan of this team. And if we lose, which we probably will, at least I'll know I believed until the end. That I didn't give up. That I kept the faith. Because that's what we do. That's Burgundy and Gold. We do. That's Burgundy and Gold. So there you have it, Commanders fans. 3 stories that are defining this franchise right now. A stadium that might carry a president's name. A star cornerback battling through a tough second year. And a wild shot at redemption against one of the best teams in the league. Which of these stories hits you the hardest? Are you worried about the stadium name? Do you still believe in Mike Sainristil? Do you think we have any shot against the Lions? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. Because these conversations are what make this community special. And if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, what are you waiting for? We're a family here. We're Commanders fans who live and breathe Burgundy and Gold every single day. We cover every headline, every rumor, every snap. And we need you to be part of it. Smash that like button if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe so you don't miss a single update. And hit that notification bell because I guarantee we've got more explosive news coming in the next few days. Tomorrow we'll be covering everything that happens when President Trump visits Northwest Stadium. We'll be watching for any updates on the stadium name. We'll be breaking down the game plan against the Lions. And we'll be here for you no matter what happens, because that's what we do. We're Commanders fans. And we stick together through thick and thin, and remember, hail to the Redskins.